Today we're going to understand how to work with arrays, more specifically to iterate through arrays. And there's different types of methods you can use for this, not just using a for loop. And I want to walk through those. So essentially we have different examples in Visual Studio Code, a couple that are going to appear in the browser, and I want to talk about those. So the first one I talk about is forEach. And forEach is great for when you're not trying to return anything, just you want to run a function for a set of items. You can think of this, for instance, for like a blog site. This could be attaching event listeners to every read more button on a list of posts. And, since posts are often pulled dynamically from like a server and loaded in real time, forEach is able to, keep you from having to, avoid you having to repeat the same code for each and every one for each and every read more button that you have. So we have an example here in the HTML. We have 3 posts essentially, and they're showing up here. We got 3 posts, a preview essentially with 3 read more buttons. Now on the JavaScript side, we have a script tag that's linking to that external JavaScript script sheet. And if we hop over to that, we're gonna see some details. We got essentially a variable read more buttons. We're grabbing all of those from the HTML, targeting the class of .readMore, which is showing up here, read more, read more, read more. And then we're essentially running through each of those with .forEach. We're running a method on this variable, forEach. And we're essentially putting within forEach, we're putting in some parameters. We're putting, an argument within, the parentheses. And we're putting in a function. And what the function is doing is, for each of these read more buttons, we want to add an event of click, and when we add that event of click, we're going to get back some content, add some content, or the rest of the post essentially. We're just doing a little abbreviation, but essentially the idea is you would add the whole post by clicking on that. And what would happen is we click on read more, and you'll see that each one of them has their content that they're pulling. So this would be a little bit more robust if you're working with a server, but the general idea is there. You're avoiding having to repeat code, and this is just a practical example of what you could use with forEach, the method that you have there. Next up, we have the map method, and the map method is going to transform each item. It's really when you want to take an array and then create a new one based on it. So in this example, we have HTML again, and in this example, we have some HTML. It's empty. We really have an unordered list here. And you'll see in the browser that we are pulling with JavaScript the titles of each of those, post data. And this is, you could use this all the time in using like frameworks like React. Once you start to know, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you'll probably move on to a framework such as, React later on, or going into, Next.js and things. And so you can use, .map as an example of, putting titles on a page like we're doing here. That's what's happening. So we have some posts. We are, just putting them here in an array, essentially in objects, and we're showcasing them in the browser, and we're running post.map. So all of these methods start with a period followed by the method, and then we're returning this and we're adding it to the HTML that we can then see in the browser. Now the final ones that I have are going to be just straight in the console. And next up we have is filter. And with filter, if you ever want to really, show only posts in a certain category, for instance, or, you want to get a specific number of items based on a certain condition, well, filter is the one method that you might want to use. So in this case, we have blog posts where you want to target the category. So post.filter, and within filter, we're putting the argument of a function, and within the function we're saying, hey, we want to only return posts with the category of JavaScript. And if we console.log this, we're gonna see that we get back the posts with the category of JavaScript. So we see, we've got React Basics and we got Vue versus React, but we don't have healthy recipes. So filter can be useful for that use case. Now, the next one we have is reduce. And reduce is going to combine everything into one value. So this could be, the example here is we're calculating total reading time in a blog. And we have some posts, we have the reading times, and what we're doing is we're saying essentially, what we want to do is, take all the items in our array here and combine it into a single value. In this case, for instance, we're calculating how long it would take to read all the blog posts. So we're adding all of these up. And, you could also do this the same for something like a shopping cart, a total amount at the end of checkout, or, other examples like, generating, reports and things. And so we can go ahead and see that. And we can run, sandbox we have. And the total reading time to read all posts is 15 minutes. So it's taking all of these totals, putting them together, and, returning that value. That's what's happening here with reduce. Now, the next one we have is .sum. And sum is going to check, if any post is, in this case, if any post is featured. So it's going to be useful for really, if any or all match what you're putting in here. So in this case, we're like, do any match the featured? And we only have one here. So if we run that, we're going to get back true. Well, we do have some that are featured. And so it's going to come back as true. We also have every, and that's going to require, does everything, in this case, is everything published? And if we run this case, we also get back true because both posts are published. That is another method you could take advantage of. And lastly is the find method. It's, to get one specific item, in this case, we're locating the post based on its ID. And so we're using the find method here, locate a post. And when we run this, we get back that post ID of 102, title, advanced topics. And so those are just a few of the array methods you can take advantage of and use in a practical implementation like a website or a blog in these examples we've been going through. And, we went through, to recap, we went through forEach. That's to run code for each item. We went through map, which is to turn data into something else. And then, for instance, we're rendering the post as HTML. Filter is just to get a subset of categories or a subset of posts that you want to showcase. We have reduce, which is to combine into one value, such as the total reading time that we did an example of. We had sum and every, which is to test if any or all match a certain identifier. And then lastly, we have find, which is to just get back one specific item, which we found here.